Are baptism and confirmation really Jewish ideas? And what is the holiday of Chanukah really about? I'm Rabbi Yossi Madvig, and you're listening to Jews Did It First. Hey, welcome back, everyone. Guess I'm doing better already, right? Had one last week, we'll have one this week. It's great. So, welcome back to Jews Did It First. And this week, I'm actually going back a little bit to an old trope. I was doing Eastern religions a while back. I did a couple episodes on Eastern religions. I had also a few episodes on Christian concepts that we tend to think of as modern Christian innovations, but really they are actually older than Christianity and stem from Judaism. Obviously, it's Jews did it first, right? That's included things like the Messiah itself. Christianity as a whole, is really Jews did it first, right? The early Christians were Jews. In fact, we've done Midnight Mass, we've done St. Valentine's Day, and all that good stuff. And this week, I actually want to look at two things. It'll help help us progress a little bit, as well as make the show a little bit longer, so it's not too short. And those two things, as you heard in the intro, are baptism and confirmation. So we'll start with baptism. Baptism is probably one of the oldest Christian practices, and it's such a Christian thing to do that it's pretty much synonymous with entering into the Christian faith itself. And the concept of baptism as a Christian rite seems to have been solidified by the Nicene-Constantinople Creed, which took place in the late 4th century. But there, it's only mentioned really as a forgiveness of sins and not so much as a prerequisite to becoming a Christian. But about 200 years before that, there was an early church father named Tertullian, and he wrote De Baptismo, which is a treatise on baptism, and he wrote that to inculcate within the church that baptism isn't just some Christian practice that's performed if you feel like it. Rather, it is essential for repentance. And it's so crucial, he actually writes that we have one God, one baptism, one church. And in addition to showing how important it is, this is probably to counter those who would say that baptism can be done regularly just to cleanse you from sin. There was actually an early Christian group called I believe they were called the Mandaeans or the Nazareans. They had different names. And this early Christian sect lived in the area around Jerusalem and the Jordan River pretty much since the 1st century CE, right around the foundings of Christianity. And they believed in regular baptism for purification, not a rite of initiation, but to do it regularly to purify yourself, to cleanse you from sin. So it seems like Tertullian was kind of trying to counter that conception that existed amongst some early Christians. Now, if you go back even further, we see baptism in the Christian Bible itself, right? The text is replete with references. You have it mentioned in letters of Paul. You have it in Acts of the Apostles, even the Gospels itself. However, even just a cursory reading will show you that it did not originate with Christianity. Right? In fact, obviously, Jews did it first. When Jesus, as I lovingly like to call him, not as lovingly, when Jesus was being baptized in the Jordan River, there's a Jewish man, John the Baptist, there, and he's already baptizing people, right? So this is sort of like this known thing that's going on. And this is before Jesus even comes out as anything or is crucified or anything like that. So this is not a Christian thing, right? So why is he there baptizing people? Well, to tell you the truth, I really can't tell you exactly what he was doing. I don't know why he was there. It doesn't seem to be explicitly said. But seemingly, what he was doing was helping people with an ancient Jewish rite called mikvah. Now, the mikvah is an ancient Jewish practice mentioned in the Hebrew Scriptures that is a form of purification. It has nothing to do with forgiving sins. The immersion in a mikvah is used for ritual purity. So if a person were to become impure through, say, menstruation or leprosy or something like that, then they would have to purify themselves by immersing in a mikvah. Now, kosher mikvah could be a natural body of water, like, say, the Jordan River, or it could be a self-contained manufactured structure that uses natural water as the base well, and then you add water to that in order to make it more accessible for people. Another use for mikvah, which is perhaps where Christians got the idea of using it for initiation into Christianity itself, is the use of mikvah for conversion in Judaism. So there's 3 steps to convert to Judaism. 2 for women, right? 2 for women, because there's circumcision is the first one. And there is some indication that early Christians practiced circumcision. It seems to have disappeared from Christianity, though, by the end of the first century. Now, the second phase of conversion, which is germane to our conversation, is that of mikvah. So this is possibly where Christians get the idea of being baptized as an initiation into Christianity. And then finally, a convert has to bring a sacrifice in the Holy Temple, which Christianity has supplanted the sacrifices with the crucifixion. While the most known and recognizable form of baptism is to completely immerse yourself in a pool of water, Catholics and some others tend to use a different form, and that is either what's called effusion, which means pouring, or aspersion, which is like sprinkling. So they either pour or sprinkle water onto the head of the person being baptized. And this is primarily a Catholic practice. There might be some others who do this, but being that that's they're the major ones who do it, I'm going to go with their definition of some things here. It doesn't seem to resemble the Jewish practice of mikvah at all, right? If we're saying baptism is the form of mikvah, so where do they get this sprinkling from, right? Or the pouring? Well, again, Jews did it first. To defend the use of sprinkling, an early church father, Cyprian, I believe is his name, or maybe Cyprian, he refers to the Hebrew scriptures themselves. He refers to Ezekiel chapter 36 and Numbers chapter 8. And in both of those places, the Bible speaks of sprinkling water for purification. In the book of Numbers, it's talking about the Levites, and then in the book of Ezekiel, it's talking about the entire nation of Israel. Now, in addition to the use of sprinkling for those purposes, you also have it mentioned in the Jewish Bible in connection to the worst kind of spiritual impurity, that of tumas mes, which is impurity from a dead body. So if a person or a house or vessel needs to be purified from this type of impurity, you sprinkle the person or the vessel or whatever it is, you sprinkle them with the special water that is mixed with the ashes of the red heifer. Now, if you're not certain what the red heifer is, the main gist, if you take a look in Numbers chapter 19, it mentions the red heifer, the para aduma in Hebrew. It mentions this procedure where basically you take a perfectly red cow. It can't have any more than, I think, 1 or 2 hairs that are not red, black hairs or whatever, and you completely burn it. You don't cut off certain sections like you do in some sacrifice. You completely burn this red cow, and its ashes are mixed with water from a natural spring. And for more information, you can look over there in Numbers 19. You could also look in the Mishnah, tractates Para and Taris, that mentions it over there at length. You can do your own research and have a ball. So, whether you're talking immersion, which is akin to mikvah, or pouring and sprinkling, which would be akin to the sprinkling of the mayim chaim, the ashes with the water, that is something that we can say confidently that Jews did it first. Now, with confirmation is different from baptism. And again, I'm going to be going primarily with the Catholic interpretation of things because confirmation tends to be a primarily Catholic activity. There are some other Protestant groups that do confirmation, but being that Catholics are the sort of biggest one that really sort of spearheaded it, I suppose, I'm going to go with their definition. So when I mention any definitions, it's going to be from the Catholic Catechism, specifically sections 1308 and 1233. And confirmation is the idea that the gifts of the Holy Spirit, like wisdom, understanding, piety, etc., are confirmed onto the one who is entering the body of the church. And it's administered to a person who has reached the age of reason, and it's a sign of Christian maturity. Now, some churches will celebrate this ceremony as early as 7 years old, and some will do it as late as 18 years old. That puts the average age of confirmation at around 12 or 13 years old. I do want to note that there are Eastern Catholics who will do it as early as birth, but it's mostly the Latin Rite, the Western Rite Catholics that will do it after the instruction at an age of reason. So I want to put that caveat in case you say, oh, there are some Catholics that do confirmation at birth. Yeah, okay, fine. You're right, but we're going, like I said, mostly with the Latin Rite Catholics here. So the average age is around 12 or 13 years old for confirmation. Well, this process seems to directly mirror the Jewish practice of becoming a bar or bat mitzvah. Bar mitzvah for a boy is at the age of 13. Bat mitzvah for a girl is at the age of 12. And a Jewish boy reaches the age of maturity that makes him biblically obligated to do the mitzvahs or the commandments at this age. And so just like the church will do baptism at birth and then confirmation at 12 or 13, it seems to mirror this concept in Judaism where we will circumcise at birth and then have bar bat mitzvah at 12 or 13. So where does the source that the age of maturity and accountability for God's commands is 13 originate? Where do we get that age? Well, we can actually see a consistent progression through the Jewish Bible and the Mishnah and the Talmud. It refers to the age of 13 as the point in which a Jewish male is considered a man and therefore responsible for his actions. So the Bible doesn't explicitly specify the age of 13. However, if you look at Genesis 34:25, it says that Shimon and Levi, who were Dinah's brothers, each man took his sword and came upon the city unawares and slew all the males. So this is a reference to the city of Shechem. When they were dwelling there, the prince of Shechem took Dinah, their sister, and violated her and forced her to marry him. And so naturally they were very upset. And they said, oh, hey, okay, fine. This could be okay if you all circumcise yourselves. Then we'll allow such a thing. So they willingly did so. They all circumcised themselves. And when they're all hurting from the circumcision, Shimon and Levi go in and slaughter everybody. So here, the Torah refers to Shimon and Levi as men. It says each man. Okay, and if you can calculate from other verses what their ages were when it calls them men. If you compare Genesis 29:21 and 31:41 to our verse, which is 34:25 again, you'll see what their age is. This is from the Midrash Lekach Tov in Genesis in our section, and you'll see that Shimon was 14 and Levi was 13. So Levi here, the earliest age that someone is referred to as a man is Levi at the age of 13. Now going forward in history, so that's in the Bible itself, which is written around 1300 BCE, and the Mishnah, which is around 200 CE, mentions the age of 13 as a time that one is obligated to observe the Torah's commandments. It says over there in Pirkei Avos in chapter 5, Mishnah 21, it says that at 5 years old, one begins studying scriptures, at 10 years old, studying Mishnah, and at 13, you begin observing the commandments. So the Mishnah also determines that a vow is automatically valid at the age of 13. And that is not from Pirkei Avos, that's from Nida. And the Talmud over there explains that this is a result of a 13-year-old being a man, as required for the vows in Numbers chapter 6. There's a slew of resources in the Mishnah and the Talmud where the legal status changes at the age of 13 or 12 for girls. It's just all over the place. I'm not going to list any here, but it's just, the concept that their legal status changes to now where they are considered adults and therefore liable for anything that they do is all over the place. But so there we have some examples of a man being 13 and therefore becoming bar mitzvah. So what is a bar mitzvah? So the term bar mitzvah means son of mitzvah, right? So bar in Aramaic means son or son of, and then a mitzvah. And in the Talmud, the term bar mitzvah does appear, meaning, one who's subject to the law, but it doesn't refer to age. However, the term bar mitzvah in reference to age can be derived, it's kind of a hint to it in the Mishnah, in Pirkei Avos, like I mentioned before, when it says that at 13 they begin doing the mitzvahs, it says ben shalosh esrei lemitzvahs. Ben, a son of shalosh esrei, who's 13 years old, lemitzvahs, begins doing the mitzvahs. So ben mitzvahs, that's like the Aramaic bar mitzvah. And so you have the concept of a bar mitzvah being 13 years old and obligated to the mitzvahs. Now the concept of having a festive celebration on the occasion of becoming bar mitzvah seems to have developed somewhere in the medieval or early modern period, since it's already mentioned in Shulchan Aruch in the 16th century. You have it being made mention that it's already taking place and it's a mitzvah to do so, a mitzvah to make a big festive celebration for a bar mitzvah. So there, it already seems to have happened by the 16th century, although you could possibly find a biblical source for it. In Genesis chapter 21, after Yitzchak is born, Abraham makes this giant feast for him. And there's two opinions in the Mishnah as to what exactly that was. One opinion is that they were celebrating his circumcision, his birth and circumcision. It was a big feast to have, there's a big mitzvah to make a feast for the circumcision, and that's what they were doing. The other opinion in the Mishnah says that, not the Mishnah, I apologize, in the Midrash says that they were actually celebrating his bar mitzvah. So there is a possibility of a biblical reference to a bar mitzvah, although it's pretty obscure and you kind of have to read into it. However, certainly when it comes to the concept of both baptism and confirmation, Jews did it first. I'd like to say a little something on Chanukah, since it's coming up very soon, next week, and that is something that you can actually go back and look at a previous episode that was on the reference to the Revolutionary War, where I compared Chanukah to the Revolutionary War. It's a great episode. You should check it out. It's really quite fascinating, the similarities there. But I actually want to speak about something else in relation to Chanukah. That concept of Chanukah, and the truth is it's found in the Talmud, where it mentions that we defeated our enemies, right? The Greeks had this thing out against the Jews, and they wanted to conform all the Jews or kill them for keeping Torah and mitzvahs. And so we had this big revolt and, fought the man, won our independence and freedom. And it's a really great concept. However, the truth is that it seems to be, if you look in the Talmud, that seems to be secondary. The main things it says in the Talmud, this is, you can find this in Tractate Shabbos, page 22, I believe. It says, after winning the war and so on and so forth, we found this cruse of oil that was supposed to last for one day, and lo and behold, it lasted for 8 days, and therefore we have 8 days of Chanukah. So really, the big miracle of Chanukah isn't so much the military victory that a lot of people seem to focus on, the Maccabees fighting for their freedom, but really, the big miracle was the oil lasting for 8 days. And that is very significant because even when we talk about the war, we say in our prayers that the Greeks wanted to destroy your Torah and your mitzvahs. It wasn't so much that they wanted to get rid of Torah and mitzvahs completely. Everybody, the Greeks were very philosophical people. You want to have a Torah? That's fine. Even learn Torah. That's great. It's, good to have philosophy and deep thoughts about the universe. That's fine and dandy. And even to keep some mitzvahs, okay, everyone's got to have their own culture. You like falafel? Well, the Greeks would also like falafel. They're Mediterranean. But you know what? You eat matzo ball soup. We eat, I don't know, whatever Greeks eat, especially 2,000 years ago. I don't know. But the real battle was against your Torah, God's Torah, your mitzvahs, God's mitzvahs. It wasn't so much about the practice itself, but the idea of purity and impurity. Like when they go into the temple, it doesn't say they destroyed all the oil. They made all of the oil impure. That was the big miracle, that they found pure oil. They didn't care that they lit their menorah. What do they care? They like candles. We all like candles. Everything's great. But to have this concept of purity and impurity, which is such a spiritual concept and a divine concept, this was like, no, it's not rational. It's not a philosophical concept. It's not a rational concept. This idea of purity and impurity, holiness and unholiness, this is something that's got to go. This concept of just doing something because it's godly, not doing something because you like it or it's fun or it's intellectually stimulating or philosophically interesting. No, doing it because it's godly and holy and pure, this has got to go. And that's why they find this one pure cruse of oil, which represents, in Kabbalah and Hasidic philosophy, this one cruse of oil represents that little spark of holiness, the cruse of oil that's within our hearts, that's within us as Jews. Everyone has this holiness that when you light it and you tap into it and you exercise it, it can actually, you can accomplish so much more in your spiritual growth and life than you could have possibly imagined. Because when you're trying to do something that's fun or interesting, you like it, and you're doing it because it's something that you enjoy, you're only going to reach a level that you can, as a finite creature, attain. But when you're doing something by reaching into your godly power, to the soul that's within you, that spark of godliness, that essence that's within you, then you're operating on a whole new level. You're operating on a godly level. and you can do and accomplish and attain spiritual heights that you could never have accomplished on your own. So I wish everyone a happy Chanukah. Access that pintele yid, that point of Jewishness, that spark of godliness that's within you, and have a happy, healthy, and freilichen Chanukah to everyone.